Hogstye.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. It is your full crew here: Alex, Steve, Dave. We are here with the Hogsty to talk about a much-needed win, a much-needed butt kicking by the Washington team that plays football that goes by another name that we don't like to say.
I prefer derriere stomping.
A derriere stomping, a rump roasting. I don't know.
Sure,
Okay,
they are Super Bowl bound officially after this win.
I think
That's-
rump roasting is pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, well, who doesn't like a nice rump roast? You know? Yes. Well, we'll get into the game in a minute. It was that Thanksgiving holiday. I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving, both of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did Thanksgiving early with my mom because she was going out of town for something else. And
Did you
so
spend 52 hours cooking like fancy bacon or something?
no. We did make lamb. We made a nice lamb roast, actually, Dora and I. So we just instead, because like turkey's a lot for two people. You don't even getting a turkey breast is a lot. So we just did a nice lamb instead.
Now, have you ever had mint jelly with the lamb when you eat lamb?
Of course,
Oh yeah, so
not
good.
not in a long. I've kind of fallen out of that, but I mean that's classic.
I don't
Oh,
believe
yeah,
I've
it's
ever
fantastic.
had lamb.
You've never had lamb.
I don't think so. No.
That's a little
Very good.
surprising, actually.
My
We all know you have your food things. I mean,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
but I also I don't like a lot of food anyway. So
Right. But lamb is basically just like fancy steak, like it.
yeah,
It's
but you're
delicious.
missing my point. I'm just saying I don't think I've ever had lamb.
Yeah. No, I get it, but it's still surprising. I mean, you probably have eaten some weird stuff like when you were in the military.
Yeah. So I have eaten meals in the Middle East that I didn't know what they were, and it's possible that there was lamb in there. Yes.
More likely goat there, but same thing.
Maybe, yeah, but it was stuff that I can identify, and nobody spoke English, so I don't know what I
Camel.
was eating.
I've
Maybe.
had camel,
Who
by
knows?
the way. Camel's weird.
Yeah, if you have to survive and all you have is a camel, I mean that may
Right.
work.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean, the most exotic I may have gotten was alligator. That's about it.
Gator.
Outside of
sure.
that, yeah.
Listen, son, that's nothing for down here. We're in
that's
alligator
where-
country down here in South Texas.
Well, that's where I had it when I was in San Antonio.
Oh, okay,
Sure.
yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yes.
Snake. I've had snake before once. Snake is awful.
I see no need to eat a snake. I'm not as inventive, and I don't feel the need to eat this stuff just because it's there.
Yeah, and I definitely have that going. Once when going out for lunch with some coworkers, we went to a fancy place, and they had grasshopper tacos. So I had to get one just to freak out because one of my coworkers is very much like you, like he's not a food adventurous person. So I had to freak him out just by eating a grasshopper.
Now I did survive Air Force Survival School.
Right.
So I can't. I'm sure I ate bugs there. I really can't remember, but
Bugs, maybe a
God knows
squirrel
what.
or something.
I think we tried and failed to kill squirrels, if I recall. So
Okay.
I think we couldn't catch any squirrels.
And
Like
I'm
there
sure you
weren't
had
any.
a-
Like there weren't any there. That's because we
Sure.
were way up in the mountains.
And I'm sure you had to boil your own urine, so you had drinking water.
I don't think we did that. But if you want me to gross you out, I think one of the because I mean, why not? One of the rites of passage in that thing is to eat the contents of rabbit stomach. So we all had to do that, like
Sure.
not cooked rabbit stomach, raw rabbit stomach.
Right.
Oh, so
Not
you
my
didn't
most
boil
pleasant-
it or anything like that. You just
No,
ripped it
no.
open and chowed down.
Yes,
Wow.
not my most pleasant culinary experience.
I'm sure. I mean, that's like rabbit haggis or something. I don't know what to call that.
I don't know what to call it. Yeah, I don't know. It was something that I did and I'm not proud of, and it's over. That's what I
Well-
think about it.
Yeah. It like you said, it was a rite of passage thing you had to do.
Yeah,
I get it.
there, guy. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah. Well, you got your guys' Air Force experience is really going to play into later in the show, because both of you guys are very experienced with something that somehow involves this football team
A
now.
teaser.
See, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know how you're listening to the show to begin with, but we're
No,
going to
no,
get some real.
no. It's a tease. You can't tell them. It's a
Okay,
tease.
okay. All right. Well, let's stop teasing them and let's talk about that good old rump roast butt whooping, um, the swirly
The
that
rump
Washington
roasting.
gave the Tennessee Titans. The Flaming Thumbtacks got put out when their heads got dunked in a toilet.
All right. Washington beat Tennessee 42-19. I'm sure everybody knows that, of course. Stats wise, Jane Daniels was 25 for 30 for 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, had a quarterback rating of 114.7. And for those counting, 25 of 30 is more than 70%. So
Yes.
that's what we want.
He's back.
Yes. Well, for one day at least. Brian
It's
Robinson.
83% actually.
83. Okay, there you go. Brian Robinson was 16 for 103 yards rushing, 6.4 yards per carry. Chris Rodriguez was 13 for 94, 7.2 yards per carry. Jane Daniels was 9 for 34. Jeremy McNichols 6 for 32. De'Ami Brown 1 for 4. Leading receivers Terry McLaurin 8 for 73, 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. Zach Ertz 4 for 35, De'Ami Brown 4 for 35, Noah Brown 3 for 27, Olamide Zacchaeus 3 for 14, Luke McCaffrey 2 for 13, Brian Robinson 1 for 6, Ben Sinnott 1 for 3. Leading tackler was Mike Sandersill with 7 tackles. Bobby Wagner and Quan Martin had 5. The sacks were Frankie Louvu had 1, and then Deron Payne and Cleveland Farrell split the other one. On the Titans side, Will Levis was 18 for 37, which is a hair under 50%, for 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, quarterback rating 84.5. Tony Pollard was the leading rusher at 8 carries, 35 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. Leading receiver is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine for 363 receptions, 61. Calvin Ridley 2 for 45. And that is sacks. And there's no point in doing the Trustway game today. And so Trustway was only 1 for 52. And I can't forget the kicker, Zane Gonzalez, our buddy, was 0 for 2.
The Zaniacs were very depressed on the 0 for 2.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and for the record, Zaniacs also the name of Billy Zane fans. If you remember Billy Zane from Titanic and all those.
Oh,
movies.
yeah, the actor,
Yes.
the mediocre actor.
The very mediocre actor. Yeah. So overall, great game. Brian Robinson, probably his best game of his career. I know that opening run he had, that's a career long for him.
Right.
Shades of, dare I say, Clinton Portis when Joe Gibbs first came back with that classic, Washington style cutback. You just take it to the house right away to open a game.
In fact, the very first run for Portis in a Redskin uniform was like 80 yards for a touchdown. Right?
I think it was 60 something.
It was a very
60
long
something?
run, either way.
Yeah.
Very long run, yes.
Yeah, but Steve, you had stepped away for a second. I was saying that Brian Robinson run reminded me a little bit of that Portis run to start his career here, where it was just a perfect cutback. You didn't get touched. You went the whole field, and there you go.
What I wrote in my column about the game, about the running game, was I thought it was the offensive line was in large part responsible for the success of the running game this time.
Absolutely.
Like that Brian Robinson run, there was a huge hole. He took advantage of it. Congrats to him. Not
Yeah.
denigrating what he did, but the offensive line was not been producing that in recent weeks. And against the Titans, they did. Maybe because the Titans stink, but they were able to do it, and that's what counts. But I give full credit to the offensive line, and I would note that I think it's important to say that was not Trenton Scott at right tackle in place of the injured Andrew Wiley. It was Cornelius Lucas had moved over to the right tackle with Brandon Coleman left tackle. And so obviously this is kind of the future. I think one of you guys said, maybe both of you said this earlier in the year, that maybe that's kind of the future. Somebody on this show said that,
Well,
not me.
it's clear to me that Lucas is maybe the best run blocking tackle they have on the roster. Maybe the best run blocker, period.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not a coincidence to me that when this team has been dominant in the run game, Lucas has been out there.
Right.
First, remember, first half of the season, he was flipping back and forth with, at left tackle, and they were kind of splitting time. Now with him moving over to the right, suddenly we can run a really nice run to the right, and they had a bunch of good runs on that side of the field throughout the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, they definitely did.
So I that can't be a coincidence, right? That you look at the evidence, you watch the game. He just knows how to control the line of scrimmage better in the run game than the
Well,
other guys.
I mean, Andrew Wiley didn't suddenly not suck.
Right.
He's out there because they didn't really have anybody else. They
Right.
had a rookie left tackle. They couldn't just
Mhm.
throw out there.
Right.
He wasn't that type of player. He's gotten better over the past, what are we at, week 13?
Mhm.
And they felt comfortable enough that they could do that rather than bringing Trenton Scott in. And it turns out they were right.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do want to keep in mind it is the Titans, but one of the things the Titans have been pretty good about all season has been their rush defense. In terms of yards per carry and things like that, I know their defense was at least highly ranked. And Washington seems to have taken advantage like this game. They really dominated them on the ground.
Well,
Well,
yeah, Dave, Dave wrote a column about this. You want to go over some details?
Yeah, that was the one thing about their defense. They were ranked 8th in yards per attempt at 4.3. They were also, for overall offensive yards per play, they were ranked 4th in the league defensively against that. But what I did in my column, I broke it down to 2 teams against the winning records, team against the losing records. I'm not going over the whole thing. You can always read the column for that.
Right.
But what was one thing that was pretty prevalent, although their yards per play on offense didn't exactly hold up very well to some of these playoff bound teams, but they were pretty stout defensively against the run on the most part. They held the Bills 3.7 yards per carry. The Chargers, and at that time of season with J.K. Dobbins, they were one of the better running teams earlier in the year, and that was week 10, 3.7 yards per carry. The Vikings at 2.5, and the Texans, who have Mixon, who's having a very good year, at 2.4 yards per carry average. So the run defense has been pretty legit all year, and that's the one thing our running back did very well. And just a note on the running backs, I actually thought that Chris Rodriguez had a more efficient day, because when you looked at the numbers it broke down, you had oh, it's right here. Chris Rodriguez was averaging 7.2 yards per carry, but if you take away his 25-yard run, he was still averaging 5.7 yards per carry. As when comparison to Robinson, he was 6.4 yards per carry, but when you took that 40-yard run away, he was down to 4.2 yards per carry average. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Robinson. I think he still had a good game. He was effective, especially in the short yardage runs. He was pushing the pile forward. He definitely had a good game. But Chris Rodriguez with Eckler out of the game, out for the foreseeable future, most likely, it's nice to see that we have someone looks like he might be apparently stepping up, because throughout the season so far, he's been averaging roughly right about, I think I had the number down for, I got to find the number again.
I can
know
pull up
he's
his
been
stats and I'll tell you what he's averaging.
Yeah, for the season, I think it was roughly right around 5 yards per carry, somewhere
4.8
in that range. 4.8.
Or
So
I'm
he's
sorry, no,
actually
this season's 5.8. Last season was 4.8.
There you go, 5.8. So
Yeah.
he's actually been productive in his possibilities, and he took advantage of what the offensive line gave in front of him, because that was a good Titans defense against the run. So I was impressed by what they did on that part.
I like Rodriguez. I liked him last season. I think he's whereas Brian Robinson is he wants to hit you guy. Rodriguez is your classic one cut, get upfield type running back. Much more of the classic zone run guy.
I've always liked him. I mean, you guys know that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had a couple ups and downs in there.
Sure. Often on the squad.
Yeah, and the bigger question would be, can he do it consistently?
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if he can do it consistently, because let's be honest, it's looking like Eckler might be back by the end of the season with this concussion, but it sounds like this has been pretty serious. This one, it's his second this year, which I didn't realize. I had forgotten that
I
he
didn't
got
realize
one.
that either. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess early in the season, like week 1, 2, I can't remember which week he was
Yeah.
saying, but he was doing an interview on the radio, and he said like this is his second concussion this year, so he's like they're being extra cautious with him coming back, and
Right.
totally understand that.
Yeah.
You know,
So, but yeah, like overall with this offense, what did they get against Tennessee? I think it stood to the point, or stood to the fact of what this team has been all year. They've been handling bad teams convincingly on the most part, except for the Dallas game, and they've remained competitive against playoff caliber teams. So at least this team is truly in the right direction. They haven't really had an embarrassing game on the most part, minus the Cowboy game, of course, in my opinion. But outside of that, this team that played this weekend, they played this well against Philly on Thursday night. I'm not saying they would have beaten Philly, but they definitely would have had Philly in a position to where Barkley wouldn't have taken advantage of the quick 3 and outs early in the second half, and maybe Barkley doesn't have one of them long runs, and maybe they hold Barkley closer into the fourth quarter before you start opening it up, and then the game's a little bit tighter going down the stretch, and who knows what happens at that point. This team was definitely much better in terms of Jaden Daniels looking healthier and stronger and more accurate. You know, the offensive line seemed more together, and I really like having Wiley out and Lucas in. You know, you're right about all that, Steve, how well they've been looking with all that. And I think defensively, especially with Latimer coming in, maybe that we might get a ripple effect on that, with Anderson going to the other side, Ignabu being the slot corner. I think there's a chance that we might see an uptick in defensive performance too coming down the stretch, which everything will mold together perfectly when it comes time for the playoffs.
Well, I mean, maybe.
Oh,
You
of
can't
course,
ignore, of course, that the Titans' offense isn't good.
Oh no, absolutely.
it's a clown show.
I mean, it's not. They're
I'm
not the
talking
worst.
future sense. I'm talking future sense when Lattimore comes in. That's going to help the deficiencies in our secondary because we still have that. Because we had guys still open again. Calvin Ridley was still getting open against St. Jude's. His Levis was missing those passes. Trust me, defensively.
I mean,
we
obviously,
benefit from bad quarterback.
Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore is going to improve the secondary. There's no question he's going to improve the secondary.
And the cutting of Emmanuel Forbes is also going to improve the secondary by
Yeah, we
default.
didn't mention that. Washington cut Emmanuel Forbes, and by doing that, it actually cost them $5 million to get rid of him.
It's actually
they have nothing but cap space today, or this year rather, and it's going to cost them next year too, a little bit, not less, but some. But overall, obviously, that's better. They needed the roster space. So.
It also means that all 4 of Ron's first round picks are now gone. Within a year, we've cut all of them.
He was a generational talent. People remember.
Yep.
You said it, not me.
Yep.
Out there.
Man. Anyway, let's get back to this game.
Okay.
With what you were just saying, Dave, and both of you really, about the Titans' offense, it's really hard to grade the defense and like how well they were playing this week because the Titans are just a mess. Will Levis is like a less good version of Sam Howell somehow. He makes boneheaded mistakes all the time. We had 2 fumbles in the first quarter, and Washington's up 21-0. Like that, like how can you can't really judge the defense very well with this.
Well, okay. So one of the things I've been harping on recently about these games is that Washington generally as a team has been making a ton of mistakes.
Sure.
And it's really hard to play good teams when you're making dumb mistakes. And today, or this week rather, it was Tennessee that made dumb mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Washington played a fairly clean game, and that's not dependent on the quality of the opponent. That is dependent on your own discipline. And in this game, they were a lot better. It wasn't a clown show. No dumb fumbles. They're not letting people run a squib kick back for a touchdown. onside kickback for a touchdown, and so they played much better in that regard. I don't know if they just got tired of losing or what, but they need to keep this mental state when they play the better teams.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of what the teams are saying is that they had like players speaking up, Bobby Wagner in particular, saying we need to practice harder, and the team responded and actually started and had a really good week of practice, and that they think that's part of it.
And having a guy like Bobby Wagner around, even though he's older, he's
Right.
lost a step. He's a guy who I think can command a lot of respect in the locker room. They know what he is and what his career is, and they're going to listen to guys like that. That's why you bring in guys like that.
Yeah, a future Hall of Famer, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, overall, how can you just Dave, what was the reaction, by the way, in the stadium after that first quarter? Like, were fans just apoplectic, or what was going on?
Well,
that would be
fact
highly distressed. So no,
that...
Sorry,
apoplectic is not the right descriptive term.
Very, fair enough. I was wrong about that one. Wrong word.
Well, let's see. First of all 3 touchdowns were right in my end zone, which was fantastic all in itself. And there's flags that they handed out in the game.
Mhm.
Actually, there was you saw that everywhere. So between the excitement of the fans, with the early quick start we had, the flags waving and everything, actually it was pretty electric in the stadium, to be honest with you. And it was like a collective sigh of relief seeing this offense on the field actually looking efficient, strong. But of course, it was the Titans. We all know that. But still,
Right.
if you want to be a playoff team, you have to beat teams this bad in this manner. And they've done that all year. So
I'd like to just dispel one thing. One of the things in my very limited time online I noticed was that some fans discussed and kind of harped on the fact that the production kind of slowed down in the third quarter in this game. Can we please give that a rest? They were up by a lot. They maintained their lead. They increased their lead. They put up 42 points. I don't know what you guys want.
They
take a
want
blowout
43
victory.
points.
I mean, it's ridiculous. That's
And
dumb.
let's
No,
be-
they didn't. They played well the entire game. End of story.
Yeah. And let's be clear about they left 6 points off the board because they missed the 2 field goals. They technically should have had 48. If they had a decent 5th kicker that for the season.
You think Zane Gonzalez is submitting applications to Home Depot about now?
I would be. But here's the problem. Who else are they going to bring in at this point? Like,
I don't know. That's a good question. That is a really good question.
I don't know if there's other kickers out there available that
have you gotten a call yet?
No, I have
probably down to the bottom of the barrel. One of us is going to get a call.
Right.
I mean, you still got that Smith, whatever, Smythe kicker from the UFL. He's still out.
You guys cannot give up this UFL stuff. You cannot. You've got to give up the dream, man.
Hey, man, when you see Blake doing as well as he is, and was it Aubrey and Dallas playing as well as he is, I tell you what, for as bad as our kickers have been, yes, I'm going to keep that dream going a little bit.
I'm at this point, Steve. I'm about to start trying to look up Arena League team kickers just to see if there's any out there who can maybe help us.
Does Arena League team still exist?
Not like it used to.
It's gone, right? Yeah.
No, there's like a low rent version of literally guys playing for beer money version of the Arena League.
I was going to say the whole league was low rent. It must be really bad now.
Well, like, okay, at its height, those guys were making $100,000 as like the star players. That like in the early 2000s.
That's low rent by professional athlete standards.
Yes, but by like normal middle class living in 2002, that was pretty good.
If you want to keep up the dream, I mean.
No, I'm saying that era is gone. Now they're playing for like $50 and
in a case of Schlitz.
Right.
That they have to split.
Yes. Maybe ice cream if they win.
Maybe everybody gets ice cream cones.
So definitely not ice cream cake because that's way too expensive these days.
No. We're talking like the box of like Goodyear candy bars.
But this is in all dead seriousness. Here's the thing. They elevated Zane Gonzalez from the practice squad, okay?
Right.
That's the third time they've elevated him, so they cannot elevate him anymore. So this means if Zane Gonzalez is going to kick again for Washington this season, they need to sign him.
Right.
And so I think this was sort of a tryout game for him. And especially, Austin Siebert is on IR.
Right.
And with the bye week here, they do have time to go, turn over the couch cushions and try to find a kicker somewhere if they wanted to.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I would, but
oh, sure.
Like I don't know if they're just kind of gonna accept that they've been cursed at kicker this year because they have.
But they have to literally have a warm body out there kicking a football.
Oh, they have to have somebody, but they might just say, "All right, Zane stinks, but we're just gonna stick with him and not kick
only
field
4
goals."
more games and maybe a playoff game. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. But next year, don't be surprised if they go heavy on kicker.
They may have a parade of kickers.
Yeah.
They may draft all kickers in the draft.
I think they'll guarantee at least draft one. They'll probably draft the kicker next year.
Yeah. In the 7th round, I don't mind that.
No, let's just burn the first rounder on a kicker. Let's just do it.
Go for it, man.
Sebastian Janikowski Jr.
There you go.
Move up in the first round to secure that kicker that you want.
Yep.
Not a bad idea.
One last thing I want to talk about with the team on offense. Cliff Kingsbury does listen to the public and acquiesce to, like, hey, when people are saying he's doing something stupid, he seems to cave.
I got news for you. He's not listening to the public.
Terry McLaurin suddenly playing on the right side off and on.
Okay, he heard our show and he changed. Yes. That's it.
He said, you know what? These guys are making good points about Jaden liking to throw to the right. Let's put Terry on the right in the first play and pass the ball to him.
Well, in Cliff's defense a little bit though is if you, I don't know how much you guys read what Mark Bullock does and how he breaks down the offense every week. The one thing that Mark has recognized is that, and then most of us just don't recognize that Cliff has actually done a good job in terms of setting up an offense for a future play off the same formation, and he hides it very well. And then he brings it, and it's just the way he morphs it and the way it comes together. It may not happen in that game, but it happens within a game or two. Next thing you know, he's recognizing a formation, he's recognizing the motion, but the play is now going this way instead of that way. When all the numbers say he's going to go that way, and that's where he gets. So the offense is still morphing into something. It's growing into something. And that's one thing that Mark Bullock has been. Of course, he's far more eloquent on talking about it than I am. But
he's an offensive coordinator's coordinator. This is something that when you listen to OCs talk, they love layering. They love setting up a play for 3 weeks from now by showing you, hey, if we're in this offset I formation, shotgun look, whatever, and then you see the tight end running a seam route, that's who we're targeting, and they'll do that like 3 times, and then when they're ready, then they target somebody else who's running a crossing route in the same play.
I think it's fair to say I think like dumb amateurs like us can maybe at most catch some trends. But I mean, but the average person doesn't know what the hell they're looking at. I mean, us included, right? In terms of like the details, even Mark Bullock doesn't really see, who's like just a savant.
Because
we're
not spending 40 hours a week.
That's exactly my point. We're not professionals who's doing it 40 hours a week. We're watching some, the games. We're watching some game films. We talk about it, for a couple hours a week. But Cliff Kingsbury is smart, and I think he is setting this stuff up. And listen, maybe had a couple bad games. The game plans didn't work. Played good teams, game plans didn't work.
Well,
it happens.
All I know is that my early criticisms, all my criticism coming into my skepticism rather, coming into the season, they pretty much all been dispelled because he's been doing the adverse what he's doing in Arizona. He's been outside of just fine, he's finally now moving McLaurin. Outside of that, he's been doing very well on adjusting on the fly, making these changes at halftime that he didn't always make. He got stuck in a rut a lot of times in terms of what he wanted to call, and if that didn't work, he just tried to force it, tried to make it work. He didn't do much to try to change or alter or whatever. It's just, but he's different. He's not. He's changed from that. So I've been pretty satisfied with Cliff Kingsbury on the most part this year.
Well, and I would point out that the Bears fired their coach.
Yep.
Cliff Kingsbury knows something about Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I have to think that he would be a leading contender for the Bears job next year.
That's what the rumor mill's already saying.
Oh, is
yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
And
big
and
time.
wouldn't it speak volumes if the Bears brought him in for an interview and he turned it down? Would that I would probably speak volumes to. I'm not saying necessarily on Caleb Williams. I think it would to a point, but that Bears front office though, especially ownership, I don't see a profile coach really wanting to go in there because of how the trend's been over the last 5 to 7 years, even with Caleb Williams there.
I have to think he would take a job like that if they offered it to him.
I'm sure that would be very tempting for him because he liked Caleb Williams a lot from what I.
He coached him, but you guys know that. Yeah. But for those who don't realize, he was the OC at USC in 2023 with Caleb Williams.
Or it was not necessarily OC, it was like some weird offensive consultant.
Maybe, but I don't know the title. But point is, he coached Caleb Williams. That was where I was going with it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, look, we should probably wrap up the recap part here because we've got some other fun stuff to talk about. So let's do our game balls and let's keep the show going.
Okay. I'll go first. I'm gonna give Chris Rodriguez offensive game ball.
All right.
Because like you, Dave, like you said, I thought he ran really well. That's a career game for him. In the NFL. So congrats to Chris Rodriguez. And I mean, little tougher on defense. Frankie Louvu didn't really put up the stats in terms of tackle numbers, but I just think he had a huge impact on the game. He had some big plays, so I'm going Frankie Louvu on defense.
Okay.
Again.
Well, I'm going to go. I was going to go with Chris Rodriguez too, but I'll branch off a bit and I'll just go right to Terry McLaurin. I thought he had a great game. He had a great reception inside the 10-yard line for that touchdown. I'll give him a button. Sanders still is quickly becoming one of my favorite players on this team because every week he gets better and better every week. And that one pass defense he had in the end zone, I mean, it just exemplifies what he's been doing the last several weeks. So he definitely gets my game ball on defense.
I'm going to agree with you on defense. Sanders still, not only that, he had the early turnover, the fumble recovery, which obviously that was huge to just putting a nail in the coffin right away. And on offense, I'm going to go Brian Robinson. That huge run to start the game was impressive. It's his career-long run. I had to double-check that, but I believe he's had 2 career-long runs this season. So they're finally doing something right on the running game. But 103 yards and a touchdown, that's what you want from a starting running back. If you give me that every week with your starting running back, you're going to win a lot of football games. So, Robinson's going to be my pick on offense. All right. So now we got to shift gears. We got to talk about a weird news story about the stadium. Obviously, we love talking about the stadium. I've always said no podcast, no radio show knows more about stadium stuff than us. It's largely thanks to Steve and his, just wealth of knowledge in that realm of the world. But I'm just a big nerd when it comes to this stuff and a fanboy when it comes to stadium stuff. So that helps, having mutual interest there. But this stadium story has gotten interesting in a different way. So we know that Josh Harris and Roger Goodell, they were at the game together. By the way, I think the head of the NBA was also there. The commissioner of the NBA was also at the which is
Adam
weird.
Silver.
Yeah, I don't
Silver.
know why he was there. He was lost, I guess. Um,
Trying to find the Boston Celtics and ended up in Washington.
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me with him.
Maybe.
I'm probably coming up with some terrible idea for a 4-point shot right now. Um, anyway, so they were at the game, and then on Monday they were lobbying the Senate. Obviously, the bill to give the RFK land to DC is in the Senate right now. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of they're attaching it to some defense spending bill, blah 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 blah. But they were talking to a couple key people. One, they met with Senator Thune, who is the critic about the whole Wetzel logo.
He's one of them. He's one of them.
He's one
Senator
of them.
Daines was from
Yeah,
Montana, was the one that started
he
it.
was the big one, but
Yeah.
Thune it kind of gleamed onto that or glommed
Right.
on, whatever you want to say, right?
Right.
But Thune is also a whip, so that's a pretty important position in the Senate. His job is to kind of drum up votes for things and make backroom deals that makes senators say, all right, yes, if you give me X amount of money for my next campaign, I will vote for this issue that I don't really care about. Change my vote or whatever. They also met with Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen, the two Maryland senators who have been opposing it. And I think the interesting story came out of this, because Maryland obviously doesn't want to lose the stadium to DC. They've been saying, oh, it's not fair to give DC land because that gives them an unfair advantage to getting a team back. Van Hollen and Cardin did say, however, that there are certain things they would like to get if they were to agree to the land deal. One was they want the team to state their intentions. Do they plan to leave Maryland or not? Which is weird, but they also want the DC National Guard to give a squadron of fighter jets over to Maryland. Now, you guys obviously know way more about what a squadron of fighter jets is. It's F-16s from what I understand. And I had to Google it, but squadron's 18 to 24 jets usually.
Yeah. So let me stop you.
Yeah.
First of all, squadrons have moved in the past from one state guard organization to the other.
Mm-hmm.
It is logistically cumbersome. However, this is a very, very, very unusual situation, extremely unusual. Because would somebody care to name for me what the District of Columbia does not have?
An airport.
Correct. Would somebody like to name for me where this F-16 unit is physically located right now?
Well, they're at Andrews
Let me
in
help
Maryland,
you.
right?
Andrews Air Force Base.
Yeah.
Where will they be located if they move to the DC National Guard?
You mean from the DC to Maryland?
Yes.
Yeah, I assume still at Andrews. Yes.
It's going to go nowhere. And so
Right.
what you're talking about really is some government paperwork shifting and logo shifting, and then convincing the right people, either recruiting DC Guard people or convincing the existing unit personnel to kind of change over to the DC National Guard, which they could pull off. So while it's a very odd situation, I think it's far more doable than it would be in other units. But I like to say that this is an utterly ridiculous thing to bargain about. It's completely stupid.
Right.
Well, actually, one correction. No, the actual Maryland Guard isn't on Andrews Air Force Base. Usually, your Air
F-16
Force
unit is on Air Force. The F-16. Yes, it is.
the F-16 it is.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
The unit, the unit itself, the planes itself are
Yes.
located on Andrews.
Right.
In
But
Maryland.
the actual Guard unit itself is actually it's roughly about 55 miles north of that. I think it's like Milton, off of Milton Airport, and they have
So,
the AT
closer to Annapolis.
Yeah, and they have the A-10 Warthogs up there, where they have up there.
Right.
Which the Warthogs are going to be completely retired and decommissioned by 2029. But the Maryland Guard unit is losing theirs by the end of this year. And what's interesting is that they've already started the process of becoming a cyberspace unit up there. So they've already committed funds and training and everything in terms of going from being a maintenance squadron to be a full-fledged cyberspace unit is what they're going to do, which will also deal with probably network warfare stuff too as well. At the
I
same
mean, if
time.
you're talking about Maryland wanting to move the entire unit, that's just an utterly ridiculous thing to even contemplate.
Right. So I mean, just even the constitution. So just even the idea of you have a guard unit that's up there, and they have their training, and they have all of their, especially when you talk about the avionics and electricians. A-10s, they fly by cable aircraft, minimal computer systems on there. Then you want to give them an F-16 to go on there, which is a fly by wire system. Now, for a maintenance guy for structures, not a big deal. For hydraulic stuff like that, there's extra training for it. But on the electrical side,
I think you're missing the point, which is the unit exists as is. And so if you really want to switch, you switch the logo and you convince the personnel to switch over from the DC Guard to the Maryland Guard. End of story. That's the way to do it.
but what they're asking for is the aircraft to come up there to the actual Maryland Guard base.
I get it,
and
but
that's
that's totally absurd. That's just ridiculous.
And I agree. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Especially
But more the bigger
aspect.
picture in terms of stadiums is it's just stupid to be arguing about this.
Yeah.
It's truly stupid.
It's one of the weirder negotiation requests I've heard in a long time.
And I would like to also make the point we're not actually talking about a stadium, okay?
Right, we're talking about land.
Right.
We're talking about the land. The bill will allow the DC to, among other things, build a stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So the fans need to not get too wrapped up over this. This is congressional nonsense.
Right.
Of the highest order. It's all it is.
It is the best congressional nonsense. Fun fact, Ben Cardin, the guy who's wanting this, that's the guy my dad ran against for the Senate way back in the day.
Ah,
so
okay.
I've met Ben Cardin, weirdo. I'll just say that. I think I can just say
not surprising.
Antisocial weirdo.
Again, he's an elected official, so that's to be expected.
Yes.
Right.
And it's not surprising that this is the kind of deal he would make to me, because that's his thing.
Well, he hasn't made a deal. They're just yapping. There's no deals.
This is the kind of thing he does.
It's just, but I'm serious. This is not like something that's done. This is senators barking in the media. That's all it is. And if you go back to the Senator Thune, stuff. The deal with the logo, did we address this before? The deal with the logo basically is that the Wetzel family and the Blackfoot tribe want to be able to use the logo. That's what that's mostly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're kind of on a side issue, kind of advocating for the Washington franchise to use it in some capacity also, which they're not doing currently. And so that's what Gaines and Thune are talking about. It's nothing to do with change the name back to Redskins, which they should do, but they never will.
No, that's been made clear. By the way, from what I've heard and read, the logo thing didn't even come up in the discussion with Thune.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was 100% about the land, and because deep down they don't care about the logo either. They
don't care about the stadium either.
Yeah, they don't care about the stadium. They care about the land issue because they want the money that they might get for it. But like we've always said, Steve, it's always about money in the end.
The truth be told, probably the highest and best use of any land like that would be to do a mixed use commercial residential development.
Well, that's for almost all land.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's probably the highest and best use, which is a real estate term for, code for what makes the most money it's going to be a stadium.
No, right. It's mixed use or maybe server farm. Like I feel like server farms are always a high volume.
Well, you're basically talking about industrial business use. There's, that's a use too. It depends on the quality of the land and a bunch of other things.
But it also means a bunch of high paying jobs. So I pay attention. I pay attention when Steve talks.
At least somebody does.
Yes, at least somebody does. That's true. So yeah, I thought when I heard that story, I was like, oh, I know now. Steve was never an F-16 pilot, but Steve knows planes.
I was also stationed at Andrews, and I know
you were
that
also
unit
stationed at
specifically.
Andrews.
Yeah.
Dave is an
F-16
engineer.
mechanic.
Yes.
F-16 mechanic and 117 mechanic as well.
right? So
Yes.
so little bit of expertise and knowledge on this here. And
And I love my lawn darts, by the way. Favorite aircraft.
I still think it's sad that the A-10 is retiring, but I am no way affiliated with the military. I just
No,
think that
it's
was a cool
another.
looking plane.
It's an entire other podcast.
Yes. I just thought it was a cool looking plane back in the
It
day.
is a cool looking plane.
Yeah.
So,
Badass plane,
so
too.
what I'd like to summarize this, because it's probably time to move on. Um, Nobody should get too excited about this. All this is a bunch of congressional hoo-ha nonsense.
Right.
Right.
They're
And
all
nobody
trying to
should worry
get
about
money
it.
for super secret things. That's what it really is.
It's just grift, okay?
Yep.
Legalized grift. Look it up if you
Classic
don't know what that is.
DC, good old fashioned grifting.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And it doesn't mean, I just emphasize, it does not mean, even if this bill passes, it does not mean the RFK Stadium's going to reborn in all its majesty. It's
Right.
highly unlikely. It's far more likely that Maryland or Virginia is going to give a better deal to fund a stadium than DC can.
Yeah.
That remains true.
Probably so. Also, if this bill doesn't get passed, from what I hear, like DC's done. Like if it doesn't get through this year, it's not going to happen.
Well,
in
also,
DC.
I mean, I would think it's going to pass. I mean, is the federal government just going to let this land sit and do nothing?
I don't know.
They shouldn't. If they are smart, which they aren't,
Right.
do something with the land. And this is
So
an
you
easy
just
way to
answered your
offload
question.
it.
Yeah.
No, they won't. They'll
Well,
just
true.
let it
True
continue to
statement.
decay.
But the easy way to get something done is to offload it to the local government and let them do something with it. You don't have to spend any money on it. It's specifically says you can't use federal money to develop it.
Right. Exactly. But if this doesn't pass this session, it's going to be 2 years. They're thinking to try and do this again, and I don't think the team wants to wait another 2 years to
No.
start.
Certainly, they can't afford to wait 2 years for this. No.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on. Talking about the team, we have a new team president, and this is the old Jason Wright job. Hopefully, our new team president is not the face of the franchise like Jason Wright had to be because Dan Snyder was the walking dumpster fire of a monster of a human.
Yeah.
And hey, here's a nice, well-read, well-spoken, smart young man who looks good on camera, and let's have him put him in front of the camera while I go sexually harassing people. That was the Dan Snyder approach. But we're past that. So now we have a real team president, Mark Klaus, who, again, military theme, West Point grad, if you guys didn't know. Former captain, helicopter pilot for 6 years in the Army. So he comes from that background. Also played college basketball for West Point, and after college or after his Army tour or stint, whatever you want to call it, he got into the corporate world. His last job was he was the CEO of Campbell Soup, which is an interesting background, I guess. He doesn't really have any sports background. And he's getting this position of team president.
I don't think it matters a single bit.
No?
And the West Point thing is great. I know something about service academies,
Sure.
and I highly respect that. But look, this is not sports. Okay, he's the business side. What
Right.
he's really doing is running the business side, and he's improving marketing from it's currently a walking dumpster fire. At least it was a year ago. He has nothing whatsoever to do with the product on the field, and so it's just another organization to run. And what it is improving public relations, improving marketing, and running an honest, efficient business. And that's something this guy can do in spades. I don't think to do this part of it, he doesn't necessarily have to have a sports background necessarily. If it
No.
was going to be some sort
No.
of like combined GM president thing, yeah, absolutely. But he's just running the business side. He's run lots of businesses. This is just another one, and he's from New Jersey, so he clearly knows Josh Harris, and so that'll go well.
Yeah. I my only concern is I do think there is some difference to almost all his background is in the food service industry or industrial food industry, I guess is it's not food service, Campbell's and things like that.
Right.
There is a difference between running that kind of company and running what is still an entertainment company in the end of the day.
Right.
Campbell Soup is not trying to sell season tickets. Campbell Soup is not does not have to worry about things like merchandise and uniforms and things like that. So I do think that there are some obvious differences between the kind of business environment he's been in and being in the sports entertainment world.
Yeah,
But
but it's still just leadership and marketing, and I don't think
I
it's a big deal.
I
And I
think
also
that a
think
lot
it's
of it
going to
does
be
transition. You're right.
I think it's going to be fairly invisible to fans.
I hope
We're
so.
going to talk. We're going to talk about
Yeah.
them now because we are. But in terms of like the day-to-day product on the field, I mean, what you'll see a difference in is the way the team is marketed.
Right.
Primarily some of efficiencies in running the team, which we won't see. So I don't think we're going to see very much difference, to be perfectly honest. Now, what they will need is somebody who knows how to build stadium. That's
Right.
not this guy, but he can find somebody to do that. He'll find
Right.
somebody like me who's
Right.
but
But
on
not
the
Steve. Steve has said he will not do it.
no, well, and I'm also on the legal side. They need a business guy,
Right.
a real estate developer, so they can find that.
Right. Right. Now here are my things I want to see from this guy just because he's from the Campbell Soup Corporation. One, we need to get some stew in bread bowls at the stadium. I think that's a high priority.
You want
You know,
stew?
Stew,
Okay.
manly stew, and beef chili in a bread bowl.
my
Delicious.
wife-
Are you talking about a giant swimming pool full of it, or what?
No,
No.
just like a
You
normal
ever been to
bread bowl.
Panera? You ever been to Panera?
I have.
Yeah,
And you
like
know
that.
their bread bowls they have there?
I do
They
not.
use they in the bread bowls you could get like tomato soup in it or whatever.
Yeah, chili.
So they're really they can be very, very good.
Right.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah,
the
sure,
Renaissance
improve the menu.
Fair. If you go to the Maryland Renaissance Fair, very popular there as well.
He might have to talk Airmark into providing this bread bowl.
Yeah,
thing you guys are
yeah.
talking
I
about.
realize that, but he's got a soup connection. I think we can make this happen. Second thing, we need to revive Andy Warhol and get him to do some ad campaigns for the Washington football team.
Why Andy Warhol? I'm
The
afraid to
famous
ask.
Campbell soup can art that Andy Warhol made.
Did he
back in-
design the Campbell soup can?
No. He made a famous artistic painting of a Campbell soup can that hangs in a bunch of galleries.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes.
I
See-
did not know that either.
Well, that's because you guys don't have arts degrees like some people.
Thankfully, I do not.
In fact, you know what? It might be something my daughter knows because she's going to school for all that.
And fun fact, a cousin of mine, or really, it's like a third cousin. He has an original Warhol because his wife modeled for Warhol, back when he was in advertising, and she got to keep the original drawings that Warhol did.
Alex Cease has the most interesting family history of anybody who's ever
Weirdos.
existed. I mean, if you put all the things together he said on the air about the history of his family, it is
Yeah.
unbelievable, these things. It really is.
Right. It's ridiculous. And
Well,
I just do a
actually,
silly podcast.
I saw an interesting conspiracy theory on Warhol, which has probably been out forever, but I only just finally saw it. And apparently, when Marilyn Monroe, when she faded and she died, that's when Andy Warhol came into fame. And when you show the structure of their face and everything, people were like, well, that's because Marilyn Monroe is Andy Warhol.
Now that is an insane conspiracy theory.
That's crazy.
That's out there. That
is way out there, but it's hilarious though. It was great how they presented. It was funny to watch.
They both had the same taste in dudes, so there's that.
On drugs, no doubt.
Yes, and fun drugs, sure, and club life, but whatever.
So I don't think anybody's ever gonna. I mean,
no.
I don't think he's gonna have a tremendous impact on specifically on things that fans will see.
Truthfully, if we ever talk about Mark Klaus, it's probably not good. Like you don't want your team president to be talked about.
Well, I mean, with the Tiny Tyrant, it became a problem.
Right.
The people who marched in and out, but. Hopefully this guy will be fairly invisible to the fan side of it.
Yeah, but I mean, in a normal organization, most people don't talk about the team president.
That is right.
I have no idea who other team presidents are, not even here in Philly. So yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because they're running the business side. It's the parts like what I did. It had
Right.
nothing to do with on the field whatsoever. I was doing marketing agreements mostly.
At some places, it's not even the same building, right? Like some of these teams, they probably completely separate them now.
Well, Usually there's one team headquarters.
Okay.
Usually there's now usually the ticket people will be somewhere else sometimes, but like the men and women running the organization are usually all in one building.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's like separated. Like the football players and the coaches are in one half, and the
Okay.
staff are
Gotcha.
somewhere else in
Gotcha.
the building.
Yeah. Just not in Washington because the headquarters is so small that you can't get away with that.
They're literally sitting on top of each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Josh Harris's secretary is sitting on his lap, while
Well,
she's
no.
typing.
But his secretary's like an 80-year-old dude. It's a thing. we don't need to bring bad juju on
I
Josh Harris.
thought it was funny. Oh, fine. I was joking. Never mind.
Steve, Josh Harris is gonna come over here and he's gonna tell you he didn't like that joke, and then he'll try to shake your hand at the wrong time.
Well, credentials for us gone.
Yep.
I already got him taken 2 years ago, so
Yeah, but we had an opportunity to get him back.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep working on it. We will keep working on it. I guess I need to not say
terrible.
Josh Harris has his
stop besmirching the good man Harris.
Well, you're gonna send the email and then he's gonna reply back. Why don't you ask my secretary?
Yeah, aren't you the guy who said my secretary is sitting on my lap? It was a joke, sir.
Yes. All right. Lastly, we got to talk about that incident with the Texans Jaguars game before we get out of here. That crazy hit on Trevor Lawrence, awful concussion, reminded me a lot of the Tua concussions. How he physically reacted.
Mm-hmm.
But what, by all accounts, dirty hit by Aziz Al-Shazir.
Yeah, I mean, what really got me about it is he led with his forearm.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, we brought this up off the air, but the truth is when these quarterbacks slide, sometimes it's kind of unavoidable for them to get hit in the head. And it's a lot, most of the time, overwhelmingly, it's not intentional. But if you're going to be low, there's only so low the defender can go, especially in a split second. And sometimes you just get a hit in the head. But in this case, he led with his forearm, and it looked like to me like he was intentionally aiming his forearm at his head. And if you go back, and Dave, you sent, maybe, I don't know if you tweeted that out or what, but you sent us a link.
Yeah, I sent it to you guys. Yeah.
Okay, a whole string of dirty hits and aggressive plays. Punches thrown after plays are over by this guy. He's a dirty player. He's probably way too aggressive, loses control. It was a completely dirty hit. The NFL suspended him for 3 games. Perfectly appropriate, if not longer.
I only question the 3 games thing because there's a lot of other dirty players who have done similar things and only gotten 1. And I do wonder if there should be a step, like if you haven't been suspended before and he hasn't, first one's 1, second one's 3, third, there should be a process in my mind. But
maybe you'll talk me into in the off season about doing some kind of statistical analysis of this, possibly, because it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in this case, it was a very highly visible play, the very highly visible player, and so they came down on him.
Yeah.
I believe, because I know in that video clip, one of the hits was to Caleb Williams out of bounds. The other one was against Tennessee Titan player. I can't think off the top of my head. I believe that was from this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had this one happen here. So you kind of had, there's like 4 instances on that video clip. 3 of them were this year alone. And then the one Tom Brady choke right there. But apparently he had other issues too as well. But when he had that many in 1 year, they were probably like, we're not going to give you 1 or 2. We're going to jump right to 3.
The NFL needs to crack down on this. So they can't have people, forearming people right in the head, especially when they're trying to, surrender on the play. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and look, I think we all are in agreement there. Like, you need to crack down on it. If he had other dirty players he plays, those should have been suspensions then. Not you shouldn't have just let it slide until now.
Right.
That's also on the NFL for waiting. And we've seen this with other guys with dirty play history. They might play for a big name team or they're a big name themselves. The NFL doesn't want to come down on that. And guys start thinking they can get away with anything. And you don't want that either. There's a whole nuanced discussion about dirty play in the league and how do we mitigate it. But
there's a fine line to be drawn. You don't want to limit limit what is appealing about the game, which is aggressive,
Right. It's a
strong
violent
play.
game.
But at the same time, yeah, you can't have guys head hunting like this.
No.
Well,
no.
also, I'm trying to remember who was a former quarterback. I know it wasn't Kurt Warner, but there was someone who was talking about the fact that right now the NFL talks about player safety, and yet we have these offenses that are designing a lot more quarterback runs that are keep putting these quarterbacks in these vulnerable positions like this. And some of these quarterbacks don't know how to slide; they don't slide right, or they're too aggressive and they're not built to take these kind of hits. They need to limit, not eliminate, but limit these quarterback runs if they really care about the safety. But they're not going to do that. So, but it was kind of interesting in him breaking that down too as well. So that kind of plays a bit of a component to that.
Well, we could do a whole show talking about
Yeah.
player safety and what they do and don't do. And I have a lot of different things that I think needs to.
Well, maybe we
be
can
changed.
do it a topic on another day, like next week when we don't have a game to talk about.
Or
for example.
that might be a good dead off season topic
Could
too.
be, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we got to wrap this up because we all have lives that we got to get to. So everybody, I hope you enjoy the bye week. Maybe, I don't know, go out and spend some time outside or with your family or something for a change. Other than that, have a good one.
Later.